So in this video, I'm taking you through my basic mobility sequence. I recommend implementing this as something that you do first thing in the morning, consistently. It is a great way for you to get a bit of a metabolism boost in the morning, to get your body fired up first thing, but also to get the consistency that is required to undo the damage that has been done to our body from all of this sitting. Because unless you have a physical job where you're on your feet throughout the day walking around, then I'm gonna guess that you're probably sitting for most of the day. And it's likely that you spend almost the entire day in this position. And sitting all day is definitely not good for us. It can have many negative impacts on our body, from temporary tightness and stiffness and muscles through to more long-term reductions in joint mobility, meaning the range of motion that you're able to move within is limited permanently until you do something about it, which is what I'm going to help you with in this video. And you might be thinking, well, I don't need to be able to do the splits, all I want to do is go hiking. Well, yeah, I understand that, but there's a huge difference between that really extreme range of motion and just being able to express the most basic, the minimum natural range of motion in order for you to stay injury-free. Because when our joints aren't moved frequently through that natural range of motion, then your articular surfaces within the joints will wear out much faster, and this means you're much more likely to injure your hips, knees and ankles. And that's obviously not something you want, especially when you're halfway up a mountain. So not only is this important for any trip you've got coming up, but it's also really important for longevity. Personally, I don't want to be an old man that's constantly glued to the chair. I want to be able to run around with my kids. I want to be able to go hiking, climbing and be active in the outdoors even when I'm 60, 70 and 80. And I'm not going to be able to do that unless I maintain and regain as much joint mobility and control as I possibly can as I begin to get older. And so the answer is to do something like this, a simple mobility routine that you can move your joints through those greater ranges of motion on a regular basis. So whilst this is about fitness and preparation for the mountains, it's also about vitality, general health and longevity. It's important to note that mobility takes time and consistency, and it should never be forced. So if you feel tightness or if you get feedback from your body, such as a pain signal, just ease off the pressure a little and work within the range of motion that you're comfortable with, and over time you'll be able to go deeper. Okay, that is my lecture on mobility. I hope you enjoy this little drill. I'm going to take you through the basics of it now, but dive into the extra separate videos that go into each of these movements on a much deeper level. You'll get so much more out of it, especially as you learn more and more with each time you do this. First one off the rank is cat-cow. This is amazing for thoracic mobility. A lot of the time, if you have tightness anywhere in the posterior of your body, from your heel to your back, a lot of the time it comes from tightness in your upper back. So if you're an office desk jockey and you're hunched over like this all the time, working on thoracic mobility is a really good idea. So that's our first one to start off with. Next is our hip swivels. So hip mobility is super important, especially when it comes to hiking in the mountains and staying injury free. Here we're doing both internal and external rotation. We've got a couple of variations. One is really strict, one is nice and fluid. I recommend doing both daily and building that hip stability, building the greater mobility and range of motion in your hips is especially going to help if you've had knee issues when hiking in the past. Next one is a hip hinge. Loads of people have really tight hamstrings, and doing a hip hinge strict like this with your chest out and shoulders back daily is a great way to boost your hamstring flexibility and mobility. So that's why that's in there. Then we go into the down dog pedal. Again, this is a little bit of hamstring work, but more for hikers and people especially with tight calves like me. Like I have to do this regularly to keep up that calf mobility, so that's why that's in there. The single leg balance, that's the next one that's super important for building stability in the hips again, and also just generally building your balance and improving that over time goes a long way to fall prevention and thus injury prevention in the mountains. The next one is our ankle mobility drill, which is super important again for injury prevention, but boosting ankle mobility is something that will help with general movement, but also the final movement, which is in this mobility drill, which is probably the most important one, and that is the deep squat. So I really recommend that you try and accumulate 5-10 minutes a day sitting in this deep squat position. I mean, if you go anywhere in the world outside of the Western world, there's people sitting in this deep squat position. So I'm trying to spend as much time in this position as I can. So a couple of minutes in the morning, a couple of minutes in the evening, that is going to make a huge difference to how you feel in your body. Go through, check out these in more detail in the detailed videos below, so you can find the progressions that work for you and start improving over time. That's it for this one. I'll see you on the summit.